co-parenting in high conflict situations.
We've created a scenario where messages coming from the co-parent get filtered, and anything outside of the co-parenting communication needs gets stripped out.
Your app is so scalable because it can help not necessarily co-parenting, it can actually help just parenting.
Going through divorce is a really big deal, and it can really take you to your knees.
I'm wondering, what do people fight over about?
Most conflict starts with that communication going off the rails.
So the days my child is not with me, I'm losing control.
AI really is the tool that we're using instead of humans in order to help protect parents. I personally am a big advocate for divorce when it is necessary, right?
I did go through divorce. I just didn't have kids. And I guess the biggest thing that was required from me, which was very difficult, to setting my boundaries and really focusing on the filtering out every potential trigger.
The statistics do show that the 3-year mark, 60% or so of these couples end up getting into an arrangement that feels okay. The reason I bring up therapy in the context of men is that I would love to see more wives encourage their men to go out and join men's groups and do some of that emotional regulation.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of SaaSy Moms. I'm Wendy.
And I'm Anya. And, today we are going to talk about one of the hardest realities that many parents face these days will be co-parenting in high conflict situations. We all want our children to grow up in happy families, but it's not always how life goes. So it's very interesting today to get a perception about this topic from Saul Kennedy, who is a founder of a Best Interest for Co-Parents app. Hi, Saul. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, so maybe you can quickly introduce yourself, tell us your background, as well as story of how did you even decide that this is the application you want to start and you want to launch?
Well, Anya and Wendy, if you had told me 6 years ago that I would be starting a life-saving AI app for co-parents, I wouldn't have believed you. I left my job in tech to become a full-time dad, and I thought that was the last time I would be working in tech. And it was life circumstance that brought me to the situation where my life was going through a major transition. Going through divorce is a really big deal, and it can really take you to your knees, as well as becoming a parent. And in that process, I just learned how challenging co-parenting can be. Here you have this relationship that for whatever reason you decided you no longer wanted to be in. And now you have an even more intense relationship of trying to navigate the high stakes decision making of co-parenting in two homes. And so in that scenario, I realized here is a group of people that really need help, that aren't being helped by the existing solutions. And I didn't set out to build a business. I set out to create an app that I needed in my own life. And fortunately, it's already helping a lot of people out there that are in similar situations.
Honestly, it is it is scary to think about co-parenting even when there is no conflict. Just understanding the logistics, understanding how much it will take in terms of these are the days my child is not with me, I'm losing control. These are the days my child is with me, and now I need to maybe, navigate something new that I have missed. But then when you add to it families who can't even communicate calmly about it, I think it adds definitely a certain layer of extra load, emotional load, that I don't want to be in this situation. I understand why parents just why kids become, this part where sometimes just, families leave, they don't divorce for kids. And I understand that kind of right now after becoming a mom.
Yeah, I don't think that anyone ever sets out with the life goal of getting divorced. And yet, for whatever reason, so many of us find ourselves in this situation. And I personally am a big advocate for divorce when it is necessary, right? I think that growing up in a home of two parents that aren't getting along can be equally, if not more damaging than each parent creating a home where the kids feel safe and where, yeah, I liked what you brought up about control. I think that that's
Hmm.
one of the biggest personal challenges of becoming a co-parent is learning how to let go of control. You now have 50% or whatever your breakdown is of custody, and that's all you can control. You can't control what's going on at the other parent's house, really. You just have to learn how to make peace with that. And when the kids come home, do the best job you can to be their parent and be present. And that's at the root of what best interest stands for, is that we try to help parents in this situation to be more present with their kids. That's the reason behind the name, is that it's best interest is looking out for the interests of the kids, which is to have regulated parents that are navigating this difficult scenario well.
So tell me a little bit more about best interest. Like, is it for the parents? Is it for the kids? Like, how would like divorced parents leverage that, or maybe a kid use it? Tell us a little
Yeah.
bit more about it.
Good question. Yeah, it is primarily for the parents. The kids benefit just by their parents using it. And it primarily is a communication tool. So, what we do is we review and moderate all communications between these two co parents. And as a parent, what you need to know when you're navigating a two home situation is actually a pretty small amount of things. You need to know when the exchanges happen. You need to know when there are changes to the schedule. You need to know when there's requests for alter, or expenses. And everything else is really not that important, especially not bringing up the past or blaming and that sort of thing. So what we've done is we've created a scenario where a parent can download the app, they can install it, they don't need to get their co-parent to agree, and their messages coming from their co-parent get filtered. And anything that isn't in line with that parenting agreement, it's outside of the co-parenting communication needs, gets stripped out. So let's say you and I are co-parenting, Wendy, and we share a kid, and maybe today I'm feeling a little bit spicy. And I might send you off a message saying, Wendy, because you're always late picking up the kids, if you even care, a reminder that they need to be dropped off at soccer at 3. Well, you're going to instantly jump into defensive. What do you mean? I'm never late. And then 30 messages later, we're both, super upset, and the kids are crying in the background, right? And so what we're trying to do is we filter that message. So the message you receive from me is Soul is reminding you about soccer at 3. That's all you need to know to be a good parent, right? To be present with your kids and to ensure that the co-parenting agreement is upheld. Everything else is noise. And so you can see in the message when you receive it that there's more to the message. So maybe you've already dropped off the kids, or maybe you're with your therapist, or maybe you're with a supportive friend. You can open up and see what the rest of the message is. And we give you some advice on how to navigate this situation. But really, it's about allowing you to just stay present with what's happening now, stay present with your kids, and not be distracted by all that noise. And in addition to that, when you send off a message in response, we're going to review that message. And we're going to let you know if maybe the way that you're using your words might not come across very well. And so we're going to give you feedback so that the message you end up sending to your co-parent is designed to reduce conflict, it looks good in court, and it really protects you from your own self. Because we can always go into places of defense or attack, and especially when we're feeling triggered. So best interest helps protect you in that way as well.
I loved when you said like about the defensive position, because now I thought, oh, your app is so scalable because it can help not necessarily co-parenting, it can actually help just parenting.
I was
When
just
we have
thinking the
like
same.
arguments and conflicts,
I
we
know.
are like
I'm
tend
like,
to like, well, you always don't take like trash, so maybe today you can, or something like that. I was like,
I'm
oh,
like, actually, all parents need it. Like, I do this
Absolutely.
exactly
Yeah.
to my husband. I'm like, you know what? Last time you didn't do this in XYZ. Well, remember to do this now. You know?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
something we need to work on, and it's nice to have you filtering those
I
messages
know. I need
in
this.
order to
I need
just
the
have
app.
regulated parents, even when they are in the same house.
I get that a lot, and I think it's true. AI is such an incredible tool for language and understanding. Here we have this software that can sit in between our very human communication and can help us show up better in our relationships. And for now, we're focused on co-parenting, divorced parents, because they really need our help. in the future, best interest may be applied to parents or heck, even bosses. I've had some bosses that I would really like their messages filtered. So, yeah, I think that there are many different options here.
Okay, and another question that I have, so you said moderation. Are you using AI in order to like automatically recognize the certain like unhealthy comments
Yes.
or okay. Do you have
Yeah.
any human who is also involved and potentially does the extra checks?
No. So, in best interest, you can bring in your coach or your therapist, and they can see the messages and the interactions if you wish. But all of the message, we really believe in real time. I think that when you're co parenting, it's really important sometimes to know right away. There are other apps out there that all your messages go through a actual human moderator. And sometimes, I mean, that can help, but it can also really slow down very simple communication. Like, Johnny forgot his lunch today. Can you drop it off at school? That's a kind message that would get through with best interest instantly, allowing you to take action and best support your kids. So AI really is the tool that we're using instead of humans in order to help protect parents.
Yeah, great. So now I'm just curious to know more about maybe like this kind of demographic. So let's say there are basically parents who divorced, right? And they have trouble like communicating just because you are in this, in this area. So, first of all, do you know any like statistics or analytics around how many percentage of families have these troubles? And why are those troubles in generally even exist? Why are people after maybe like a very strong phase of like going through divorce, right? Like, okay, they like already don't like each other. They likely had a lot of documents they had to deal with. They are maybe not super happy with how the child care is split because they had to do compromises, right? So, but then to me, it feels like, okay, over time, it should just calm down. And now they accept this reality and now they move on with their lives. So, what are these main like triggers or reasons why people still, after years, cannot find a common language and ground with each other? Because at the end of the day, it affects their kids. And like, what do you see? And I just want to, understand how the like, because a lot of moms or dads watching our podcast, they can relate to it. And maybe they are in the situation where they're like, damn, like, I wish, I solved the situation and just leave happily ever after, but I can't. So, what do you see? What are the trends? Like, what is your take on this demographic?
Well, there's a lot of reasons that can cause conflict. And like you said, it's an arc, right? Most people that are going through divorce, they, especially if they're going into the court system, there is an amount of conflict that starts them off. Maybe there was even some event like an affair or something that sparked this. So there is potentially resentment going into the divorce. There's also just the way the family court system here in the US at least, but I know also other places in the country or in the world, they are sometimes fighting over money, and it can be a really intense time of survival and changing your home and upheaval, and just all of those changes can increase stress. So we're dealing with two parents that are often super stressed. They're navigating a big transition. Even if they don't have a personality disorder or something that might cause them to lash out and attack the other parent pathologically, we're still dealing with a lot of conflict at first. Over time, the statistics do show that conflict, once everyone gets settled, the 3-year mark, 60% or so, if I recall correctly, of these couples end up getting into an
Mm,
arrangement that feels okay. And they're
okay.
not bickering and going back and forth. But then the rest, there's actually still a population where the conflict continues and is ongoing. Typically, in those situations, there is a personality conflict that's coming up, like narcissism, that's causing those dynamics, those high
Mm,
conflict dynamics. So the way we look at it is best interest can step in the very beginning and help everyone to reduce the amount of conflict in their communication, which may reduce the need for court involvement, which will
mhm.
be good. And then also for those that are in ongoing conflict, we can help them in the long term too by shielding them and reducing those sorts of toxic cycles that can come up in those extreme cases.
Okay, so imagine I'm at the first stage. I'm like, okay, I made a decision. I'm going to divorce. And then I listen to our podcast and know about best interest. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to install an app. How this app will help me to navigate this conflict with my partner? Is it just communication? It's only like a chat? Or is there something else that can help me?
Well, so best interest helps you structure your communication. So we, like most co-parenting apps, there are other co-parenting apps out there. We allow you to set up your co-parenting calendar so you can arrange for trades more easily. You can share a to-do list and things that help you navigate as a parent beyond just a chat, more of a structured communication style. But I believe, and the experience that I've had with our users is that most conflict starts with that communication going off the rails. And so typically when a parent downloads the app and starts using it, maybe during the separation or before the divorce even happens, what they're doing is they're reducing the amount of stress that they're feeling on a daily basis, and they're reducing the cycles that can occur that can result in family court intervention. And so they're helping by speaking more kindly to their co-parent and being coached on how to communicate better. They are potentially avoiding those dynamics that might extend that timeline of conflict.
That makes sense. Actually, I was, trying to understand, like, was there a moment where you're like, okay, like, definitely we'll need a technology, solution to help with that? Were there multiple parents that you've been working with that were like, hey, like, we're struggling with this. This is a, unification problem around the world. And coming from a technology background, like, you're thinking of different ways to resolve that with technology. Like, how did that came about?
Yeah. So back in, say, 2020, I was semi retired. I was full time dad, and I was facing separation and the start of a divorce. And that was a really intense time. And I was finding that we were getting stuck in these loops of conflict over text, especially. It was overwhelming. And there was actually this one moment I remember. I was lying in bed. It was 10 p.m. I get that familiar ding on my phone from Our Family Wizard, which is the app that I was using for communication at that time. And my heart immediately stopped in my chest. And I had that familiar, like, oh shit, what's that going to say? And I couldn't relax. I couldn't go to bed. And my girlfriend at the time looked at me and said, you got to do something about this. And I thought, oh, man, I really do. This is really hard. This was the 30th message that day. The first step I took, being a software guy, was actually that I reached out to a former employee of mine and I asked, would you be open to being a customer service agent for my relationship? And he kind of looked at me funny and he said, okay, we'll try that. Professional guy, I figured he wouldn't be triggered by the same stuff I would, so maybe it'll work. And I did that, and it actually did work. And at the time I thought, maybe there is a business here. Like, this could potentially work. But when I really thought about it, it wasn't scalable. It was too slow. It just wasn't something that could become a business that would help other people. And so I tabled that for a while. And fast forward to about 3 years ago, I was using AI for the first time, ChatGPT. I was making stories with my kids before bed. We were doing a collaborative story time where they would come up with their favorite characters and it would make a story and then I'd read it to them. And it was really fun. And that night, I laid down to bed and I thought, gosh, I wonder if I could take some of the messages I'm receiving and get some insight because it seems to really understand language. And I did that and immediately felt seen. I really felt like it could understand what I was going through. I thought, okay, well, here is the solution to this problem. Here is something that I could potentially start a business around and help others. And in that time, I had joined groups and met many other co-parents. One thing that you discover after going through divorce is you start meeting a lot of other divorced people. I think before that, a lot of us think, no one else is divorced. I don't know anyone who's divorced. And you end up doing that. And so I had in that time learned that I wasn't alone, that this was a problem that was happening to a lot of people. And so that's the spark that became Best Interest.
So actually, a little bit like I'm, interested not only in the software but also in this like topic as a, like divorce, co-parenting, like all of this challenges because I think that you also have some data from already having this application. Like I'm wondering, what do people fight over about? Like, what are the main, like, do you have the top three common topics of why people fight. Like, is it because they still remember past mistakes and they're bringing them up? Or is it because people are stubborn? Like, is there any reason where people are fighting, and what are those reasons?
I love your curiosity, and I love that question. And also, we don't really do that type of statistics on our users. We have I believe it's really important to give users privacy in their communication. We also have a feedback tool so that when any user receives a message and a filter that they don't think was very accurate or didn't understand, like something that can happen is that maybe we confuse the name of a kid and a pet or something like that. And so they'll give down feedback and then they'll be able to correct it. And that goes into their own personal data set. And that's fed into all the prompts that we send to filter their next messages. So it's almost like each individual user over time is training their personal coach on how to navigate this particular relationship. And it learns about the way that their responses are received by their co-parent. And so we're building a profile up over time so that that parent feels most supported in using best interest.
So, I know we talked about like, your journey into, creating this and all that. I'm actually curious, like, obviously, the parent itself is hard enough. I think navigating the force on top of that and navigating your kids and, setting expectations and all that, it's all, I find that very overwhelming, even like, thinking through it. Like parenting is hard itself already. So as you're, building the SaaS and as you're navigating your divorce and all that, like, do you have any tips to share on like just emotional regulation? And like how did you, deal with the situation? Because I think this is one area where a lot of, parents and even kids itself struggle with. Like, do you have any tips based on, your
Absolutely.
experience?
Yeah, well, being a parent, I think every parent can relate to this idea of parenting being a journey that, maybe we didn't fully understand going in, how challenging it might be. I've noticed that whenever my kids reach a certain milestone in their lives, it's sort of, for whatever reason, bringing up something in me that happened when, say, they were 3 or 4. It's like I'm reliving my past in a way through them. So, in terms of, emotional regulation, in my own journey, being a former Googler, I never imagined I would be solving this type of problem, that I would be helping others with their own emotional regulation. I myself wasn't really in touch with my own emotions as a man. I just didn't really understand what I could or should do in that way. And so going through divorce brought me to a place where I needed to face these emotions. I needed to learn how to cry. I needed to learn how to face those inner demons. And the way that I see things with best interest is that you can go down the path like I did, where you're working with a therapist, you're managing your triggers. That's all really good. And I think that that is a very important part of growing from a challenge like divorce. But my goal with best interest is to provide a safe place for you to do that. Because in these situations, what can happen is that you're feeling triggered every day. You're not only navigating being a parent, which is hard enough, navigating switching to a new home, maybe moving, and all of this is overwhelming. And if you add that on top of it, receiving really challenging communications and you're feeling triggered from that, it is an overwhelming experience. So my desire with best interest is that we can shield our users from that initial trigger that allows them to just stay present with the other things that are going on in your life. And it takes that overwhelm down so you can really get to a place, that sweet spot of healing instead of feeling overwhelmed all the time.
Yeah, that's important. I think the triggers is what drives those deregulation. And then I'm just curious. I think Anya, you had a question though.
I had a question because we are talking about like this obviously improvements, right? Like we are talking from a fact that, hey, I can be better communicator. So how does this work if, let's say, another person refuses to use the application? Or like, is it even going to work if I am just using something that filters my communication versus when two people use it and both communication is filtered?
That's a really great question. So I knew going in that that was going to be a potential cause of problem, because some parents don't want their messages to be filtered. They don't even want the reduction in conflict. And so in that scenario, you have one parent who's like, I want things to get better. This is too much. And then one parent who's like, this is working fine for me. I want you to just be receiving all the messages I want to send you. And that's a recipe for disaster. So what Best Interest does that's different than all the other co-parenting apps is we're the only app that allows you to download and use the app today. And how we do that is you can basically give a new number to your co-parent and say, this is where you can text me from now on. They don't have to download an app. They don't even have to know you're using an app, but they just have to switch a number. And people switch numbers from time to time. So about 60% of our users are using it in that mode. We call it solo mode. And it allows them to do that without getting their co-parent to agree to use it. The other way of getting it done, if your co-parent doesn't agree, is you can go to court and get a court order. And we've also had users that have done that. So both co-parents end up using the app, even if one doesn't really want to. Courts generally side with the desire to reduce conflict. So it's not a difficult sell to get them to agree to order this. And then also we have a lot of users that use it together that they're both realizing this is best for us, it's best for our kids, and they can both download it and benefit from it too.
Okay. And then when it comes to like again, okay, so basically you know that it benefits. Now, are there any success stories you can share? Like, is there any examples? Or maybe you can share your example if you think like maybe testimonials are confidential. I don't know if you post them on your website, but do you know exactly like, hey, there was this mom, she was struggling because someone like her ex-partner did XYZ, and then this is what was the outcome? Like other success stories.
Absolutely, yeah, and thank you for asking that. I'm having to pull up my my testimonial sheet to remind myself of some of the things that have been said. And the thing I'd say overall is that I didn't anticipate that Best Interest would be received in this way. I knew that it could be helpful, but I didn't really know how helpful. Every week, I get a message from a co-parent saying that it's changed their life. They say that often. And I think, wow, for $15 a month, I can change someone's life. That's really amazing. It really keeps me going with all of this. One of the messages that I received recently that I really like, she said that this is one of our users. She said, for the first time in months, I feel at ease and protected. It feels like I have an AI bodyguard who's got my back and is keeping me safe from harassment. I really love that image of the AI bodyguard because I feel like that really fits. It's a nice visual of what we're providing to some of our users, is that we can stand in between and prevent abuse.
So that's amazing. I mean, obviously, I can tell that, by the way, like I can relate to a lot of things because I did go through divorce. I just didn't have kids back in the day, so it was easier for me, right? And I guess the biggest thing that was required from me, which was very difficult for me, was, having this bodyguard, but in my own, by myself. What I had to do was just setting my boundaries and really focusing on the filtering out every potential trigger because I was so committed to just get it to the finish line. But I know it can be hard for a lot of people to do that. And I like this bodyguard comparison. But the question that I have is, can we trust AI to be this bodyguard? Like, what do you do to really say, okay, the AI has filtered this and this definitely needed to be filtered versus, oh, it filtered, maybe there was some important information you needed to know and now you missed it and now you're in trouble. Like, how do you have this controls and how can I be sure that this bodyguard actually is about healthy boundaries versus filtering out actual information that I needed? Because it can be, it can be in a it can be in a form of, I don't know, it can be in a form that AI might not recognize. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. And, AI isn't going to get it perfect. I'll admit that right up front, that we are also as a company learning and growing and we're getting feedback from our users. I'd mentioned that feedback system. It helps train your personal AI engine so that it catches more of your personal situation. So if you miss something that was actually quite important, you can give us that feedback so we won't miss it again. But even then, that brings up a few ideological points that I'd like to make about the way that we handle things. So, best interest will never co parent for you. We're never going to send a message without you reviewing it first. And in fact, you get the final say. So if we pop up a message when you try to send one and we say, oh, maybe you shouldn't say it like that, you need to tone it down a little bit. You can still say, no, I'm feeling spicy today. I want to send this. Or maybe we get it wrong and you can just send what you want to send. That's totally fine. It's always up to you about what gets sent. And then on the flip side, too, when you receive a message and we filter it, we always indicate if there's more to the message that was filtered out. So you have the choice. In fact, we always recommend looking at that original message, especially when you're feeling resourced or when it'll flag it as urgent if there's something that's potentially urgent there. So you should always review that original, and it helps protect you from that initial kind of triggered response that you might have, but it's not a replacement for you actually reviewing the message.
And like, are there any common triggers that you initially fed the AI with? Or how are the guardrails set? Like obviously every divorce is different, every parenting philosophy is different. Like how do they, I guess, like train the AI individually?
Yeah, that's a really great point. So, in the beginning, what we did is I brought on an advisor. Her name is Dr. Ramani, and she's a therapist with a lot of experience navigating these high conflict dynamics, how to talk about, how to communicate with a narcissist. And we fed a lot of that data and input into the original system. In addition, we had 30 co parenting pairs that agreed to join us during a beta. And each one of those was of different conflict levels. Some didn't have any conflict, some had a lot of conflict, some were barely speaking to each other. And then we used that data because they agreed to allow us to use that data to then train our initial algorithm. And so that's basically how we built that first engine because it's based on actual co-parenting dynamics and some of the things that can come up. That way we know what's important and not when it comes to co-parenting. And then in addition, from there, each individual, like I'd mentioned, we learned from that particular relationship because each one's different. So over time, as you use it, it should get better.
Does it ask it questions like when you're initially using it just to like give it some more like, okay, here's how I approach parenting, here's how I want to have like be a co-parent, sort of like questionnaire to like train that AI?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. When you sign in, there's for the first time, it'll ask you some orienting questions to understand about your relationship. Is it super high conflict? And these things help inform how we talk to you. So obviously, in a situation where there wasn't a lot of conflict, we wouldn't want the coach referring to your relationship as high conflict. But
Mhm.
if you are in a high conflict relationship, that's the way you view it. And so we want to make sure that we're using the same language that you do when we're talking about that relationship.
Got it. Okay, no, that's very interesting. I think it's really like you know what Anya and you mentioned. It's just like how do we remove some of these triggers so you can have like a more co-regulated relationship that's beneficial for yourself and your partner and your kids. So yeah,
Yeah.
and I really appreciate you sharing a lot of that.
Yeah.
Just as in kind of a recap, I guess, for you know moms or parents that are listening to these podcasts, what are some of the tips you have for potentially married couples going through divorce? Um, and maybe Aya, you can even share those as well.
Yeah. From my own personal experience, one of the most important things that I've learned is that I need to learn how to just be more present with my kids in all of this and to catch myself when I'm leaving that presence. Because I believe as a parent, the biggest gift we can give our kids is being present. And one of the hacks that I use in my own life is that I have a 7 and a 9-year-old, and my 7-year-old right now is going through a phase of he wants everything done for him. He's very demanding. He wants me to pick him up and take him to bed. He wants me to play games. He doesn't want to do anything alone. And I get it. He's going through that phase of leaving early childhood and going into middle childhood. And in that transition, there's kind of this clinging of not wanting to grow up. And I feel that and I know that. But sometimes, especially as the founder of a SaaS startup, I don't have a lot of time. I don't have time in that moment. Maybe I'm actually stepping into a phone call or an interview, or I'm working on an important build. And so in those moments, sometimes I don't have the time. So it's about giving him and setting expectations. Sorry, I'm not available right now, but I will be available in 15 minutes. So I'll join you then. And the other thing too is sometimes I feel really exhausted as a parent. That's a very relatable experience. Is like it's very demanding to be a parent. I will offer my kids presents even if I'm not doing the thing that they want. So if they're saying, "I want to play a game with you." I love playing games, but sometimes I'm not in the mood. So what I say is, "Can I watch you do something? Can we come up with an activity together that I can watch you do? Like, can you dance for me or whatever?" Usually they're like super, all they want really is my attention and my undivided attention. So I give them that. And then the other thing that I'll mention too is I am absolutely addicted to my device. And, a lot of parents can relate to that, I'm sure. We have a home or a room in our home that is a phone free room. And the kids know that they can go into that room, and the parents that are there, they're not going to be on their devices. They're not going to be taking pictures. They're not going to be looking at their phones for news. And I found that to be a really easy way to navigate the phone free time with the kids. Because when we try to set, oh, and phone free Sundays or whatever, inevitably something is going to come up and that's not going to work. But having a spot where they know that it's kind of phone free and safe really worked for us.
I like the phone free room. I think I have the same challenge. Like I'm like, oh, I'm phone free between like 6 until you guys like go to sleep. But there's always like someone calling you or there's some like things and it's like so hard too. And I feel like I'm like a hypocrite because I say that and I never can live up to it. So I like the free room that I think that. So I'm gonna take that up.
There's something about having that geographical understanding. We even actually had my artist daughter draw a little diagram showing no phones allowed, and so just like a good reminder for all of us, and they know that they can call us out when we're using phones in there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then just as a follow-up, like, you mentioned about like, this ad was really just to help with eliminating some of those triggers and helping both stay emotionally, regulated. Do you have any tips on, you mentioned as well, like parents are hard, like it's a hard job and maybe tips on like helping people stay, emotionally regulated as a parent and maybe like even as a child as they're going through lots of changes, like maybe, your parents are getting divorced or, different stages of their childhood. Any tips on that?
Yeah, well, as a child of divorce, I can definitely relate to having gone through that experience. And I went through it when I was quite a bit older and I was already more independent. So it didn't really impact me, I would say, all that much. And yet my kids it was very early on that we got divorced when they were young. So it's always been their life having two homes. They don't even remember a time when they didn't have two homes. And that informs my own ideas around emotional regulation and what it takes. I think that something that divorced parents can get into is a lot of guilt, guilt of having put their kids through this. And I would just love to remind those parents or parents that are considering getting a divorce that you will get through it. It's going to be a portal of time that's going to be really challenging for everyone. And yet you're all going to navigate it. And you're going to end up on the other side. And ideally, this is the story I hear from so many parents, it gets a lot better. Each day is a little bit better. In fact, you get to a place oftentimes, like I do, where I look at my life and I say, I'm so glad that I made that decision. My life is really good and we are navigating it all very well. And I think that it just takes time. And so just being patient, but realizing that what you're doing isn't something that is somehow setting up your kids for failure or a failure in and of itself. It's actually you potentially taking matters into your own hands and setting a vision for your own life that is bigger than just putting up with whatever you might be dealing with in the marriage, especially if there's emotional abuse or whatnot going on. And then lastly, I would say too, especially for men, don't be afraid of going to a therapist. I can't believe it took me till 38 to go to a therapist. I would have benefited so much by going earlier on. And these people are trained to help teach you how to go inward and to process. And if you don't go inward, then you're essentially being pulled by whatever things are coming up in your life. Those are the triggers. The triggers are things that you respond to instinctively, rooted in some of the traumas of your youth. And I didn't realize that I was being governed by those things. And it took really going inward and feeling those emotions, processing the junk that was stored up in there that allows me to get to a place where I'm just not triggered by the same stuff that I was before. And it allows me to show up in ways that I just feel a lot more in control of my own emotional states, and then helps me be a better dad, able to help them. And I think it's also modeling for them too what healthy emotional regulation looks like.
Yeah, that's absolutely like amazing advice. And I think here at SaaSy Moms, obviously it's kind of we have a name like moms, but I think one of our mission is also not to show just also like emotional load, let's say, that moms have, but also show the emotional load that dads have, because we tend to, talk about how like moms are always in it, but it's also about dads being in it. It's just the coping mechanisms and the kind of maybe external way of expressing those emotions are different in a lot of cases between men and women. But everyone is emotionally loaded, everyone has their own things. And actually, one of the things that personally from my experience, because my divorce happened before I had a child with a different person, right? So but I was thinking about children, and I was thinking about, hey, how can I be, let's say, in this relationship and have a kid? And divorce can be a good thing. And a lot of times when I see people, just having, let's say, a conflict, or like not knowing even, hey, do I want a kid or I don't want a kid? It's much better to like prevent, like sometimes divorce can happen even before having kids, and it might be a good thing, because then there can be a chance to, meet a person with whom you will be more connected and more matched in order to go through such a hard life change when you have a kid. I think we should also talk about, hey, don't be ashamed. Like if you have been in a relationship for maybe 7 years, 8 years, and you kind of don't see the potential of having healthy relationship in the future, it's better to just, maybe live this life and ensure that like both of you will be happier at the end. So that would be my personal experience and my take. And I'm definitely not a promoter of divorce, but I'm promoter of like personal health, like happiness, and having from life what you want to have from life. So
Yeah, and just to add on to that
mhm.
too, therapy, the reason I bring up therapy in the context of men is that I would love to see more wives encourage their men to
Yeah.
go out and join men's groups and do some of that emotional regulation. I think especially in our culture here there's a normalization of men not really getting emotions. And I think it's just a culture. It's not because men don't have emotions, it's because we've learned how to repress them. And that the best, most intimate relationship you can have is when both parties are doing that deep inner work, and you can get to a much better place in a relationship. So if you're married and you're listening to this and you're saying, we're not, he's just watching sports all the time or whatever, right? Whatever the trope is, I really would encourage the idea of going and getting therapy before it gets bad, because sometimes by the time it gets so bad that you're like, oh, I need therapy, it's too late. That's the emergency room. You want to get in there when, things are okay, but they could be better.
And I also from like experience like from men that are around like me, who are like with their girlfriends or even my partner. Sometimes men also think, oh, psychotherapy like is not for me. Like, and they sometimes do have strong opinion that, hey, no, this is not what like men do. Men should carry their emotions and that's it. But I agree with you totally that, encouragement, the truth, self-development is kind of the best long-term strategy for joint success.
I'll let you in on a little secret. I think that whenever a man says that they're not willing or comfortable doing therapy, it's because they're actually a little bit afraid to go inward.
Yeah.
I think we hide from the inside emotions that we know are there. And we know that the therapist is going to hold us to task. And it's really important to do that work.
Absolutely. Well, that was a very exciting conversation, Saul. Thank you so much. Thank you for bringing your experience, and thank you for sharing your personal view, which is really important. And this is exactly what we want with our show, to have like the personal touch. And thank you for opening up. And yeah, we wish you all the best. We wish your app to, scale and let us know how maybe our audience can find it, and if also maybe you can share like how our audience can find you to maybe ask certain questions if they do have those.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on and allowing me to talk get so deep on some of these topics. So, if you are a co parent or you're navigating some challenging moments in your marriage, you can find Best Interest by going to the Apple App Store or the Android Play Store and downloading the app. It's available there on both devices. You can also go to bestinterest.app. And I can be reached personally at founder@bestinterest.app. So I'm always open to getting your insights and questions. I'd love to hear from you to engage in conversation.
Yeah, awesome.
That's
Well,
great.
I really appreciate you, Sol, like just hopping on. And then just as a last thing, what's next for you, Sol? Like, as a something that the audience could look forward to.
Well, we're actually launching a new version of the app very soon that has a lot even more improved features. So very excited about that. And yeah, I'm really excited about this world. The AI I think is really giving so many opportunities for all of us, both in how we build businesses and grow our visions. And so I'm just excited to be living at such an exciting time.
Yeah, no, awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, that's it for today's episode. Happy for all you guys to join in again on today's SaaSy Moms podcast. And we look forward to, hearing your feedback. Be sure to subscribe as well as leave us feedback on Instagram, on LinkedIn, or anything you can find us. Appreciate everyone. Thanks, everybody. Bye for now.
Bye bye.